that, I want to jump right into our presentations for today. And we will start with Audrey Elias, who teaches fourth grade at the Brooklyn School of Inquiry. Take it away, Audrey.
Okay, thank you, Renee. It is so nice to be here at a session that is aimed at elementary school teachers. I'm really looking forward to learning from you guys. Yeah, I love that hand gesture that I can make a connection. Do you guys know that? If you can make a connection, you do this between you and the person. Thank you, Eliana. I'm hoping to learn from you guys as well as hopefully sharing what I've been doing that I found works. When we got plunged into remote learning, the one thing I knew for certain was that I had to meet my children's social and emotional needs first, or else they wouldn't be able to learn at all. And you guys probably feel the same way, because after all, you teach the young ones too. So for me, the fundamental right from the first day of instruction has been morning meeting, that we meet every morning at 8:50. And it's as close as possible to what we had in the classroom. So I start off, just as Renee did, with greeting every single one of them. Because my personal theory about kids is that they want to be seen, just like we do. I think it's a basic human need. And if you can give a child that feeling, it really helps them learn from you and helps you teach them better. So I start off with greeting every one of them and waiting for some kind of response. It doesn't have to be verbal, it can be a smile, it can be a wave, but some acknowledgement so that it's an interaction, not just the teacher going down the list. So it would be like, good morning, Renee, how are you today? Thank you.
Very well, thank you.
Fantastic. But I might say, Michael, how are you? You're looking a little sleepy. Are you okay? Fist of five, how are you? Thank you for smiling back at me. It makes it feel like we're interacting. Exactly, so that every one of them, every kid wants to hear their teacher say their name with warmth and affection. They hunger for that. It's like the kids who misbehave because it's the only way they get to hear their name, even if it's Nicholas, stop that. So using their names and letting them interact briefly is super powerful. Now, some of you, how many of you are on Google Meet instead of on Zoom? Do you have Meet grid view so that you can see all of them? Because it's an extension. Yeah, Mara, it's great, isn't it? Because you can see every single little face. But it's been acting up lately, so what I make sure I do, after I've greeted everyone I can see, then I go to the list of participants and make sure that they get greeted too, even though I can't see them. Now, let's say somebody's phone is looking at the ceiling instead of showing them. So I gently tease, hey, Aiden's ceiling, good morning. Can you tell Aiden when you see him that we'd love to see him? Or, Sam, that's such a cool picture you have, but we'd really rather see your beautiful face. Can you come out, please? Just to try to coax them all out into being seen. You know, even if they're feeling sleepy, even if they're in pajamas, I don't care. I want to see them. And I tell them what a lift it gives me to see them so that they feel it's that belonging, significance, and fun thing. How many of you know Responsive Classroom? Yeah, that they belong, that they're significant, that they matter, that their being there matters. So keep an eye out for anyone who comes in late. They deserve to be greeted too. Fiona, I just saw you come in. I'm so glad you're here. Sophie, you got up on time today. Yay for you. So that's helpful. Then, so using their names, greeting them is a powerful tool. So is your face. So what I try to do, you might notice that I'm fairly close to the camera, so it's really just my face in the image. And for me, it gives more of a sense of immediacy with the kids. I want them to see me. I want them to see my expressions. I think it helps build the connection. But the most important thing with your face is the eye contact. So if I'm looking, the temptation, now I'm looking at your faces. And the temptation with my kids is to look at them because I miss them. But if I'm looking down at you guys And now I'm going to look up at the camera thing. You see the difference? When I talk to you like this, it makes them feel like I'm looking into their eyes as I'm talking to them. So as much as possible, I try to look at the little camera hole, not at them, especially if you're listening. Like if you've called on someone and they're answering, they're sharing, whatever. Do the classic listening thing. Gaze deeply into their eyes, otherwise known as the camera hole. Nod, tip your head. Let them feel like the teacher is giving them or their complete attention. Very, very powerful tool. And dial up the expressiveness of your face a little bit if it comes naturally to you. Normally your body communicates that too, but they don't have your body. So just don't be fake, but just up the volume a bit on your face. Then giving them ways to respond. I tell my guys, listen, this isn't the Ms. Audrey show, okay? I want you guys to be responding to me. So the mics have to be off unless they're called on. The chat stream has to be just for whole class business, not private conversations. But you can give them ways to respond. So like, how was your weekend? And doing fist to 5, holding up their thumbs. What did you think of that? Sorry, fist to 5 is fist to 5. And thumbs up, thumbs down. And then call them on it if they're not doing it. So, Finn, don't be lazy. Let me see that thumb of yours. How was your weekend, buddy? So that they know that you're seeing them, that they might be alone in their room, but that you can see them and that you care, that they're participating. Then when it's an actual lesson, you can adapt that, whether I know some of you teach little tiny ones. So if it's a consonant sound, make this shape with your hand. If it's a vowel sound, make that shape. Or I teach 4th grade. If that sounds like something a patriot would say, then, put your tricorn hat, here we go, tricorn hat on your head. If it's something that a loyalist would say, I don't know, come up with a gesture for that. But you want them interacting as much as possible. Renee, how am I doing on time? 8 minutes goes by so fast.
Yes, it does. You have about 2 more minutes.
Okay. The other key part of morning meeting is the fun part, belonging, significance, and fun. And the best sort of fun, you can do things like charades or Mad Libs or telling jokes and riddles. But the best kind of fun is one where everyone can participate simultaneously. So like a scavenger hunt. If they're little, go find something that starts with the letter D. And then everyone has to bring it back. If they're older, it's one thing that worked really well was find something that's made in another country. And everyone runs off, finds their things, brings it back, and does a brief little explanation of what it is and where it comes from. And they seem to really enjoy that. I've attached the document that Renee set up, the Drive document. I put a list in there of ways to have fun with your class, some ways that I found that help. Because it's important for them to have fun. If in doubt, there's always jokes and riddles, but I try to mix it up so that it's not just the same thing day after day. Person, place, animal, and thing. So I say a letter, and you all need to think of a person, a place, a person's name, a place, geographical place, an animal, and a thing that all start with that letter, and then type it into the chat stream, all 4 at once. The first person who does it gets 5 points, the second person 4 points, and so on. And I keep tallies, and they have a lot of fun with that too. Because again, they can all participate simultaneously instead of having to wait for one person to go. Because with 32 kids, that's a lot of waiting. And it's probably about my 2 minutes. Thank you, Renee.
Thank you so much. So Vanessa, I see that you have a question, and I'm wondering if you can add your question and Helene's question together from the chat.
Yes, hi Audrey. I was just wondering, I teach from K through 4 and on certain days, and I'm a specialist teacher, so I teach science. I don't see them like and certain days, there are kids who just don't want to show their faces, and even with I do greet every single one who comes into the Zoom room, but they will choose to put an emoji or a background, and sometimes it's not even allowed to show faces, right? Because if it's being recorded, there are certain rules for that. So that's kind of my question. What do you think?
Well, I've never had a session where we were getting recorded so that their faces couldn't be seen. What I try to do is gently coax them out, like maybe reach out to them personally. I mean, you're in a harder position because as a cluster teacher, you see them, once a week? Maybe twice a week. So you don't have quite the same relationship. If you just greet them warmly and by name, even if they don't come out of hiding, they're still going to feel, remember, they can see you even if you can't see them.
Right.
So talking, especially that good old looking right into the pinhole camera on your laptop, will give them the feeling that you're looking at them, even if you can't see them. But that must be hard. My heart really goes out to cluster teachers at this time. I mean, at least my kids and I have a strong relationship by now, but.
Excellent. I think we have time for one more question. Monica, would you like to pose your question?
I just hadn't heard of the fist to five. Like, I don't know how you use it. What is it?
Fist to five is just a way of showing a reaction. So fist is like 0. So how are you feeling this morning? This is feeling terrible, feeling great. And then of course you always get kids that will give you this if they're having a really fantastic day. It's just a really quick way to get a sense of how people are feeling. So like, okay, how clear is this to you? If I've just explained a math concept or something, fist to 5, you've got it completely. You have no idea what I'm talking about. It's a quick way of getting the pulse of a room about something.
Thank you. We also had a question here from Kyra about playing Mad Libs on Zoom. And hopefully,
just Google it.
Okay, fantastic, good. So with that, we need to move on to our second presentation. Thank you so much, Audrey. That was fantastic. And our second presenter is Michael Robinson, and Michael teaches 3rd grade at the school at Columbia University.
Hi guys. So one of the things that we were thinking about when we made the transition, right, it was abrupt. So thinking about how we could keep things as regular as possible. So I'm gonna, in terms of like scheduling and making sure that kids could anticipate what was going on. And that was especially important for us when we were working across the disciplines as a homeroom teacher. So I'm just gonna share my screen and we're gonna take a look at just a couple of things to consider as you are thinking about, especially as a homeroom teacher, how you're thinking about tackling reading, writing, math, social studies all at the same time without it becoming a mess, which it could become. So one of the things that we were really thinking about was how can we make the transition from physical classroom to virtual classroom, and how can we think pretty one-on-one about this? So instead of being able to have all of our live whole group mini lessons, we moved to recording whole group mini lessons at the beginning. So our kids still get their reading workshop, their writing workshop, their math workshop, their social studies, their read aloud. It just comes in a different form. Instead of having those live small group meetings where we pull kids to the rug, we have been thinking about the breakout rooms in Zoom as the small group meeting times, especially if you are fortunate enough to have a teaching partner. That's been really helpful where we can split up in that way. And then having live individual, live individual conferences, we lose that spontaneity of calling a kid to the rug one-on-one or sitting next to them to talk about their writing. So we scheduled in those individual conferences. So we wanted to make sure that the kids had all of the big pieces from our physical classroom onto we use Zoom, their Zoom classroom. So then we were also thinking about maintaining the structures and the patterns. Renee and Rebecca and I were talking right before about how much more challenging it's going to be to launch in September with kids who we don't know, but we've been able to lean really heavily on what kids already knew. So for us, we've been using the workshop model. So we've been able to keep instruction the same. Again, across the day, in each discipline, kids get their video mini lesson. They get about 30 minutes of independent or partner work time. And then we use our Zoom session, kind of the opposite of what Audrey was talking about. We use our afternoon Zoom session as a share. So we get to really discuss the day's work. So that's been something that's been really helpful and with accountability. And then also making sure, one of the big projects that we did was our study of the Harlem Renaissance. So making sure we kept the disciplines discrete. So making sure that kids were clear that during social studies, what they were doing was investigating material from the past. How are they looking at secondary sources to learn about the past? How are they looking at primary sources to investigate the past? Same thing with reading and writing workshop. Our kids did after they learned about the Harlem Renaissance as a whole group, they read about a particular figure from the Harlem Renaissance, and then they wrote that person's biography. So just being really clear with them about how social studies time was more teacher directed. They were going to learn about the time period in general. During reading workshop, that was their 30 minutes just to read and take some quick notes. And their writing workshop was really to write. In the past, even in the classroom, we had trouble with kids kind of bleeding across those classes, and you end up with some kids who have been reading for 3 weeks and writing nothing, or vice versa. And then just making sure that we keep our materials accessible, kid-friendly, engaging, and consistent. So thinking about how we can put as much as our kids were very familiar with Google applications. So making sure that we kept things inside of Google Docs so that they could always reach it. Just like in the classroom, we would have an anchor chart up. We made sure to include their anchor chart into their daily plans. Just like we would make sure that kids could go and get math manipulatives during the day, we made sure to put links to those digital manipulatives into their plan every day. So making sure that they were able to get what they needed and engage in ways that they felt comfortable. The consistency, it kind of across all of this was key. It took a couple of weeks for kids to really get the hang of it, but they're there. And now, the end of year stuff comes and we're getting out of pattern and kids are very thrown. So we sent out a weekly schedule to their families so that they knew when their live Zoom sessions were. Most of their work was asynchronous. After we sent out a schedule, they were able to do the work on their own time when they wanted to read or do reading or writing or social studies or math. But then we had small groups that met regularly, and we made sure that we kept these times consistent. So if you were in Math 1, it was always Monday, Wednesday, Friday, always from 12:30 to 12:45, where we could do something like a number string. We had kids sign up for these blue slots. These were their individual conference times. I have 16 kids, there are 16 slots. So they were able to come in for those. I know that other people have much larger class sizes. So just to see that we did meet once a week with those kids to focus mostly on reading, and that 2 o'clock time was all of the class coming in. I shared this presentation, and I shared all of the plans that we use, but you can just get a sense right now of this is what their doc looked like. Every day we mailed it out at 6 o'clock the night before, and every day they had a link to a video mini lesson. You can see that there were charts and extra reminders. This is how long you're supposed to do something. This is what you need to turn in. All of this is included in the folder. But we thought that was really important because kids always knew that they were getting a video mini lesson. They always knew that they had 30 minutes of independent work time. They always knew that they had what we call questions to consider. So we didn't want to add any additional work. We didn't want to say you need to write about everything you read because we wouldn't have done that in the class. But these are things to think about that we will talk about at our 2 o'clock Zoom meeting. So be ready. Again, with the workshop model, we made sure that kids were doing the work. We really made sure that just like in school, our mini lessons were 5 to 10 minutes. We wanted to make sure that the kids were engaging, and that as much as possible, we didn't change our instruction. We just translated it. That we set the same expectations, we covered the same curriculum. We had tweaks here and there. Certain materials we only had physically in the classroom, but we moved as much as we could everything digital, so that if we are in class, if we're in the building in September, they've got exactly what they would have had they been in our class the year before. We also did we're going to do a field trip tomorrow. folks, and I think the plans are in the doc as well. So just making sure that we, like Audrey was saying, that kids have fun and that they can interact with each other. So some kids are going on this field trip with their families. Some kids are going with other kids. It's all just on Google Slides, and they'll use Zoom to interact with one another. So then there are a couple of resources here if you are interested in like the more like this, how exactly did this all go down? I just put in plans for, you can see things got more or less dynamic, but this was just an example of a day. Renee, I know I have 30 seconds. So this would be the video mini lesson that they could click on. It's me, a reminder of the teaching point, independent work. This is a link to a digital book. It's a digital copy of what we would have done in the classroom. And these are some of those questions to consider when kids came together at 2 o'clock. So inside that, like I said, inside that folder, you've got just some of these reminders, and then you've got all of the materials. Straight out, they get better as they go on. The earlier ones are a little rougher, a little more rough, but social studies, read aloud, reading, writing, kid research materials, and our planning for the field trip. So really making sure that we translated what we would have done in the classroom digitally, really making sure that we made things as regular, as routine, and as structured as possible so that kids and families always knew what to anticipate.
Wow, thank you so much. I see, Marilyn, you've got your hand up. Jump right in.
Yes, hi. Thank you. So, Michael, I really like how it's organized, and I'm wondering about the weekly schedule where you said that there were the like 3 core content areas, and then at the end you said like there was a 2 o'clock Zoom where you discussed all 3. So I just want to make sure I was understanding correctly. Do you have separate Zooms for each of the content areas, and then a 4th Zoom where you discuss all the work they've done?
Yeah, we did. So I'll pull up while I'm talking. So what we did is we had those small group sessions that we directed kind of what we needed it to be. But then the 2 o'clock Zoom kind of rotated on what we thought was going to be hardest or what we thought was going to be the most benefit to talk about as a whole group. So thinking about like for a while, when we revisited multiplication with like doubling and halving, we knew that kids were cobwebby from before spring break. So we did a lot in terms of that. But then we focused on social studies when we had to go back. We already learned about slavery in New York, and we already had those big conversations, but we knew that we needed to give that content and that SEL support to talk about slavery in the South. So it rotated based on the day. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I think we have time for one more question. So Kyra, jump in.
So my question was about the, I really appreciated your, like the big group, the smaller group, and then the one-on-one. So the first thing was also as an independent school, initially we didn't think that we could do one-on-ones with the kids. So that was sort of I mean, I guess, you were able to. And then on that chart, does every child rotate within the week? So you said you have 16. So yeah. On that list, you were able to see them once a week for 15 minutes by themselves?
Yeah, so I'm just going to share again. I just cut the names out because I knew that this was going to be shared. But yeah, so generally speaking, the kids who were in like Math 1 came 3 times a week. Their time was set. And then these 15-minute signups, we did yes, to your question, we met with them individually once, mostly thinking about reading, but then we also had availability if kids needed to stay. So particularly after that Zoom meeting, we said, if anybody has questions, you can stay. We set up some like extra support hours, and then kids had like learning support and all their other services. Okay. But so then by the end of the week, kids would have been in a small group or individual 7 times, 3 mass.
Either or, okay.
Yeah,
Thank
3
you.
and individual. You're welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Let's turn to our third presenter. Eliana Lane teaches 4th grade at the Cadman School. Take it away, Eliana.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's really fascinating seeing how how important both Michael and Audrey's shares were, and yet so different, but so related. And so thank you both for that. It helped me feel a little more at ease presenting today. So for my presentation, I wanted to talk about one unit in particular that I felt went pretty well considering the global pandemic thing. So we were in the midst of our second round of book clubs where we had 4 book club groups going. All of the books were books about immigration in the 20th century, and each of the books looked at different time periods. So we were right in the middle of that when all of this happened. So I wanted to share with you how we continued the book club process. So in school, each child was reading one of these 4 books, and every session they would have a role sheet to fill out, and the roles were things like analyst, and that person's job is to look at character traits and look for evidence that supports those, those traits. And then we had seer, where you make predictions grounded in the text. And anyway, so there's a number of these roles. So when we switched to remote learning, we sent them all home with their books because we knew there was a chance we weren't coming back after spring break. So luckily, all of them had their books. And 1 or 2 very innovative families went to YouTube and found the books. So really, there was just a lot of community involvement with being on board with it. So they all had the books. And so what we would do is we would, just like at school, assign the pages for the session. We posted the role sheets in Google Classroom, and we let them choose which roles they wanted to do. And generally, we just encouraged a rotation where they choose, just don't choose the same exact one every week. Or every day, sorry, because the session, well, it was more like every other day. So there would be one day to prepare, and then there would be a live session where they would share out. And what was really encouraging, it was one of the first moments of relief with online learning where we gathered and they shared out their roles, and we actually had a discussion about the text. And it was one of the first moments that really felt like, oh my gosh, this feels like actual school, wow. So it was a really special moment when they shared out. So I'll just quickly share with you what a role sheet looks like. And the groups were about 4 or 5 kids per group. And this is the kind of thing that they would share out. One of the books was Letters from Rivka. So here, I'll stop the share for now. So anyway, as we continue towards the end of the book club groups, the next thing that we would normally do at school is start preparation for the literary essay. And the way we would do that is by beginning the conversation about theme. And we, even before getting into theme, we just start looking at recurring topics. The way we often frame theme for the kids is that theme has to do with a certain perspective on a topic, a lesson, a belief that the author has. That tends to be more about the theme, and then the topics are more neutral. So the first step was just looking at the topics that come up a lot in our books. And so I was about to share my screen, but hold on, before I do that. One thing that we would do at school is we would have the kids add Post-its to a piece of chart paper. So on the chart paper, we might have the topic persevering through challenges. And as a group, they would write on the Post-it and, post a scene that shows persevering through challenges. And I was thinking, we were thinking, how can we translate that chart paper to Google Docs, which is really a variation on the question we ask every day as we adapt this curriculum. But here is what we did. So we created a shared Google Doc. Sorry, let me move you guys over here. Yeah, so we created a shared Google Doc called Important Topics. This is happens to also be from Letters from Rivka. We read other books too, but this one happens to be from that as well. And in blue, I put the topics, and what the kids did is they wrote their ideas and just signed their names to them. So this was our Google Doc equivalent of Post-its on chart paper. Now, we had a range of responses. This group happened to be really, really responsive and very independent with this. Some of the kids added maybe just one idea. Some of the kids started to add something, but maybe weren't quite sure what to do. So we followed this up with a small group live session where together we worked on the chart paper. And if we were doing it in school, you know, we teachers would be circling around the room checking in. And if we saw a group was stuck, we would be helping them. So I think it makes sense that not all of them were able to just jump in and do it. But by the end, it did feel like they understood, oh, we're collecting scenes that are examples of these topics. Oh shoot, I had set up a timer and then forgot to press go. How am I doing on time, Renee?
Let's see, hang on. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, well, I'm probably not going to get to all of the things that I thought I would get to during this presentation, but I think you're still getting a sense of what we did. So after talking about, you know, these topics coming up in our books, we switched gears to start thinking about theme, and we encouraged the kids to think about themes and stories they are very familiar with, and we opened it up to scenes from, you know, not just books, but it could be from movies, TV shows. This student wrote about the theme in My Neighbor Totoro, which is a wonderful movie, by the way, but the theme, one of the themes she talked about is sisterhood and caring for your siblings. And I was pleased to see, you know, she was able to look at the topic of sisterhood, but then thinking about a lesson in particular, the theme, that perspective. I had another student who wrote about Avatar: The Last Airbender and how the theme has to do with using your power responsibly. In this lesson, we used a little help from Brain Pop to talk about theme. And usually with every lesson, we actually use a similar structure to what Michael was talking about, where we have a mini lesson that we film. A lot of that we do asynchronously, but it's anytime there is a Google Doc, there's a video of one of us explaining how to use the Google Doc and how to fill in the Google Doc. Anyway, after we did that, we moved into themes in our books. At school, usually we would have the kids come up with the themes, but we did feel like they would need the added support of us generating the themes for them, just because while I do think some of them could have done it independently, just knowing this group and knowing, you know, who they are as learners, we just thought as a whole it might make sense to give them themes. But we also did give them the option of choosing their own. So option one was a teacher chooses the theme, and then there was the option of the student choosing the theme. So this student actually did both. He wrote about this theme that I came up with, and he also came up with his own one. So that was our way of differentiating, you know, giving the kids an opportunity to come up with their own if they wanted, but also feeling like they had the support from us. I'm guessing I'm probably running out of time, but anyway, we continued with the unit, and even though at the end we weren't quite able to do a full literary essay, we were able to gather scenes that supported a theme. We were able to talk about how to organize those scenes into, you know, 3 different sections of an essay. So it didn't look exactly like it would have at school, but I was really proud of the fact that we still got into theme, got into literary essay, just so that way when they go into 5th grade, they will have had some experience with this. And I was just so pleased with how deeply they analyzed their books and just tried their best. And that probably takes me to time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was wonderful.
Unshare my screen with you. I don't know where the little tab went. Hold on. I will figure out how to do this. There it is. All right.
Great. So as we're waiting for a little blue hand to come up, we can just note that Helene notes that Post-its on chart paper can be done digitally through Padlet, which is at least someone may be able to tell me if it's always free or if it's just free right now. And there's also a template on Google Slide for Post-its, which is a great addition to the conversation. All right, any questions? This is a lot of material. I know we're throwing your way. Bridget, jump right in.
So I had a question that's, I think, pretty pragmatic, and it relates to, Michael, mostly what you were presenting. I'm wondering about accountability for a lot of these students and how, I mean, the technology learning curve is unbelievable, but I saw that you teach 3rd grade, right? And I'm wondering, how were the kids able to navigate a lot of this, a lot of the Google Docs and the links, and even typing in their responses underneath a theme? I know that's a very kind of practical question to ask, but I'm wondering about how that worked in the beginning versus how it's working now, weeks later.
Eliana, do you want to go first about your class?
Sure. It was a range. I think what helped is that we had been using Google Docs for a lot of their written work earlier in the year. So their personal essay, their persuasive essay, they had already written on Google Docs. So I think what really helped is that there was that familiarity with with Google Drive. And that's ultimately why when we initially launched remote learning, and at first we were using a number of different platforms, but very quickly it was streamlined to Google Docs, just streamlined to Google Docs, because that was, again, where they were familiar, what they felt comfortable with. That being said, you know, we did still have, I would say, you know, there was like a quarter of the class where even with the video, even with the Google Doc, they weren't quite sure what to do with it. But it's hard to gauge how much of that is, you know, did they watch the full video? Did they see how I did this? Or is it that they did watch the video and they just aren't quite sure how exactly where they're supposed to write and where they're supposed to fill things in? I do feel like at this point, there's been less trouble with that. I think generally they're finding their rhythm. But I think a big advantage was the fact that we had been doing so much on Google Docs before this all happened.
Right.
Yeah, for mine, we have a lot of technology, so kids were familiar with kind of the physical tools, but they're not quite there typing-wise. That's why I wanted you to start, Eliana, because ours was different. Ours was like, you know, how, in theory, how to use a Google Doc, but you were so slow at it that we can't.
That's tough.
And so one of the things that we did, we also leaned on Google really heavily. I'm just going to share. I forget, you know, we all did a million little learning sessions, but using Google Slides was really helpful. So this is like my teaching notebook. And then we were able to put in anchor charts. Like this is from the Teachers College Reading Writing Project, but it also enabled kids to handwrite and just to put into pictures. So we had, except for our last published writing piece, almost everything the kids did, we just got them in the routine of upload into your digital notebook or have your family member do it. So
how did you, actually, just to build on that, I've had some trouble with uploading basically uploading things. What worked? Like what helped them learn how to upload things? Because that's been frustrating.
Yeah. So we had, it was the two things, like this is like neater because this is from my phone. So I was able to upload it straight from my phone. So it took family support in the beginning, but then we also had the, our kind of other option was, if they had front facing cameras, they would hold it like that and then have Zoom take a picture of it and then they could upload it from there. That got, I mean, most kids got good at it eventually, but like it started out with a lot of like this. Yeah. They got the hang of it. Next year, we're probably all going to go to Seesaw. Our primary, our like kindergarten through second, use Seesaw a lot, and we're really successful. And I think that that's the one that we're all going towards. But like in the spirit of keeping things consistent, we didn't want to switch midstream. I know that some classes had it, and I just made the choice to go through with the Google, even though it wasn't perfect.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much